have always used the word interview, meaning a set-up situation, insofar as for filming purposes, that a single person or maybe two people are asked to sit in or stand or whatever in a particular position, so that I can ask them to or have a conversation with them, maybe. But it's a more formal setup than other filming situations where people are conversing among themselves or so. This is a formal setup situation, where initiated on my part as the filmmaker, and asking or getting questions going or stimulating comments or whatever, but it's a formal setup in order to elicit responses of one sort or another. I mean, I've used interviews to provide the commentary and expressions of emotion and such like in my films, and to make films which use as little or even no external commentary. And I think that I prefer that myself. I find external commentary provides too much distance, and anyway in ethnographic films, all the knowledge which the external commentary might provide has come from the people who are being filmed, so why not have them provide that commentary? And if it's because you haven't been able to get it, then maybe there's this, like with Ivo's first film, which was no sync sound, and there wasn't the possibility, and so he provided the commentary from another Hamar source. Then that makes sense. But this the so-called voice of God commentaries, forget it.
Yesi akadati dabi kaisai.
Wuzurur waha abakhat. Waha da khayis. Tawum mata kaisi wudi da khayis ber mata ma. Mata khala. Wai tananka aga meki gibi pach konnal kala da. Dia wai kala da. Wai lama. Wai irlama disi. Igra khana da igra disi na kholi mata ma. Igra wasa kadiken wanna zage wasa moni samono video zaka. Kisa urara afin kisa kola afin daha kina shafa kayong enta kisa birante dinama hakimaton nan apaha afin kisa kola kina wannan desbet ani burqalo dar wadi mahabatari kira wasi desbetari kin wannan desuma nargala wano desi nsi ama
Takina ya dia pakmidi
kina ingesa dari bakhmama siani guri kina dia mai sa andana gire bakhaman ki gara dia matik anan mai isinin imba isinin isiran imba ngoran ki kumi sakape no dani mai su bakhabo
kapale danna ya pimba
era idu lidu ko na yaya eno qalai anzaza adama aizi da hoyidi aga ko sa adama ne ba aga la sinta isa adaman qalab.
There has been a development in throughout the films which I've made, from more set up interviews situations to very not planned interview-like situations. For example, in the first film which I made with Joanna Head, it was basically a whole lot of interviews which formed the meat of the film. And Joanna, who was the director, she had a particular idea of how the interviews should look like. That the women should sit in front of their houses. That one had the house, which was the woman's domain, and the woman sitting in front. And but then there was, even in that first film, there were the young men who went off hunting, and the girls were preparing a feast for their return, and this was a real happening. And so when we were filming not the hunt but the return of the hunters and the feasting, and in that situation, which was their own organization, I could then have an interview with Duka, one of the girls, and ask her about the event, and to also ask the hunters what they had to say about hunting and so on, so that it became I was more able to conduct what I call interviews, which is my asking questions to elicit different kinds of responses. Becomes more and more informal the more closely the filming situation allows it. The camera didn't seem to brought to all the interviews situations. It brought an importance and intensity. Everybody was more sort of representing themselves, and when it were other matters, my relationship had already been built up. I mean, it wasn't like I was coming into a place where I hardly knew anybody, but I knew people for years. It was already 19 years since I had first come to Hamar when I made the first film. And I knew all the people. Some of them I knew since they were born, and others since they had become brides and so on. I mean, I knew them really intimately, and they were and it was I who was conducting the interviews, and the trust and the familiarity and so on was already there, that they were not inhibited to express their feelings. Although that's not always the case. I mean, they also were, knowing that they were being filmed and recorded, they knew that somehow or other people would be able to see and hear what they were saying, so that they edited their responses, as it were. Sago ang kanito.
Kanidi.
Aga sagonda sa parsida como Yerbano.
Aga parsida. Ini sago imal daisi. Aga dal kadan ini di kalam bulia qolmina kisi ini urin kan sai kisi kusi katamarane koti buno doji kuni am bakakeda ko dukur muligan tawo di mashab wano si bahab imbe borebe osu chol wana yirli kawa imbe sa agato si badotais wanda kash kusi uchitai wan birai ni mona pai pir kumais pai sago khal inta wa isatini wa be mana wa be wa takadan ingo onu kidilama uskodda mana wa be kodicho kama hata imbaka aike isa gidi imbaka aike lo kujurmai won arsana maqedi keda arobo inta kote boru na geda inta kote mia kona gian kodi qansidi sana wagala geshona asa idar uswana kuma asadi geshon kona onin koni atini agata ko zaman dalka kidi ini pa yen na gara gara ena kunnun dalkan da sai kidi gara gara sana yen da bai sakanai pirkisi ucita gecho dar inta masa singet keda agata kidi urin kansi siane kudi katte di sien keda isa ama di tidakon ko suningi keda sagu idan kanan.
Especially in interviews, and generally when they were being filmed, they on the one side, I had the feeling it was a kind of therapeutic, that they were using it in order to sort out for themselves their feelings about, like, for example, Duka, her feelings towards her husband and towards her co-wife or towards her mother-in-law or whatever. That in this interview situation, talking about it, it was different from just a complaining session when there's no camera and no recording going on, because there was always this potential that her husband would see and hear what she was saying. So she then was seeing things also from his point of view. When I was asking what she felt about him beating her, for example, she would then also think about what he had been feeling, or why he might have been driven to beat her. and it was a kind of therapeutic thing going on. And generally, the person being interviewed, the person who I was asking questions, who was being filmed and being recorded, could present what she wanted or he wanted. He or she was very much presenting him or herself as they wanted to be seen and to be heard. I was very apprehensive before the film crew turned up. I thought, my goodness, I had always thought I wanted just to make a film with myself and a camera woman, and that would be enough. But to have a director, a camera woman, a sound woman, and a camera assistant, and myself. There's 5 foreign women. What would this great presence do? but I was in Hamar for 3 months before the crew arrived, and I had told everyone, yeah, the crew is going. These women are going to come, and they're going to make a film, and they're going to film the women, you women, and they all started. They were going to be our guests. From their point of view, they were going to be the guests, and they wanted to welcome them, and they also wanted to. It turned out that it was the crew, these women who turned up and who were also keen to be friendly, and were very receptive, very accepting of the hospitality which my friends were offering them. In the interview situation, it was as though, and I often would say, well, I know how you get married, or I know how things are, but our new guests, they don't know, so please tell me again. and they represented a kind of audience for the women in the interview situation. And also, so often they would say, but you know all that, why should we have to tell you that again? And I would say, yes, but Joanna doesn't know, and Nina doesn't know, and Ali doesn't know. And so they would perform for them, as it were. So that the interview situation is also a performance. Yeah, that was how I had wanted it in the first place. Although I really I quite enjoyed working with the large film crew, but the real filmmaking was like Ivo had made it, with just sort of where the filmmaker and the anthropologist, when I helped taking the sound and Ivo was making his film, then there wasn't all these outsiders, but it was a homemade sort of situation, and that's what I always wanted, and it was fantastic.
Wadi man pai ya shkai skeda wadi man maqdi sakakeda ja.
Hier an Giau Filmen Tau
ingie kidasin tamo imbabe na kaya kide ikan imbe kinka wadi mais ikan no zelint isairu paya ul oisais kulaka ongaka zelenka wul sadalqin ka ul ana upaya usidambai tibet wadi midini amai tamu imbana inta filminka kiape ki anamma kinaka anamma naka ul ki dese ki kanse ya pai sinashe aga inta filminka kinada erga
Hiya.
Especially, not only was Kaira a camera woman, she had been as an infant in Hamar. She had been again as a young teenager in Hamar. She was more in tune with Hamar than either Ivo or myself, because in infancy you pick up the vibes and the smells and everything. So she was really in tune with Hamar, and So it was a very, very different situation. In the filming situation, it was a conversation. It wasn't even so much a presentation to strangers, but much more intimate. I don't know, much more familiar. The great thing about film is to be able to show things which an audience wouldn't otherwise be able to see. I mean, that's why we watch TV and watch even fictional films, in order to see things which one wouldn't otherwise ever see or hear or experience. And yeah, the world of women and children tends to be, or my experience of them in Hamar, I could only experience them on an intimate and familiar way, and I wanted I thought this was fine, and they seemed to think it was also fine that others should then see the film. But there are, from the audiences then, both in Addis Ababa and in Germany, and even in the States and places, there have been some people who have objected and said, this is too intimate. This is, you're exposing a level of intimacy which should be private, shouldn't be available for anybody to just view. In particular, of course, is in Duka's Dilemma, you get to see Boro giving birth to a child. In fact, it's amazingly discreet in terms of, it's not like a clinical birth giving which you get shown in school, where it's completely different, very, very discreet, but also very yeah, you can see that Boro is experiencing labor pains, and the other women are giving her assistance, and then baby is suddenly there, and this is always an incredible moment in anybody to see a child being born. It's just quite mind-blowing. And for some people, this was, they considered this much too intimate to be shown publicly on television or on a festival where there's an audience. And when we first showed Duka's dilemma before it was shown to any public and before it was broadcast on TV, I brought the film to the community where the film had been made, to show to the people who appear in the film, and to Boro, who had given birth to her child, and so on. And they saw the film, and I asked them, is it all right to show that this film is shown to strangers, to other people? And they said, yeah, it's fine. You've made a nice film. So I felt I've got the... because I also had my own feeling, maybe it's not good to... Maybe they wouldn't want this intimate scene. Maybe I also come from a world where this sort of thing is not... Well, or I mean, mostly giving birth to babies is a private affair, not a public affair. So would they mind? And I asked them, and they gave their blessing. And the first film show was in Addis Ababa. We had a sort of retrospective of all the Hamar films, which Ivo and I had made. And it was the last film which was then shown. And there was an Ethiopian filmmaker who objected very violently and said that this was no good. But Duka, not Boro, who had given birth to the child, but Duka, the co-wife, and Sago, the husband, and another Hamar, Choke, were all present at this film show and answering questions. And they were very... they said, what's wrong with it? It's a good film. And Duka was particularly impressive. She said, what's wrong with giving birth? After all, everyone here in this room came into the world that way. So I was still thinking, well, that's fine. And then again, in Germany, at a film festival in Göttingen, there was an Indian journalist who objected very much to this. He said it was exploiting the poor black woman, village woman, to film her, and that it was wrong that I should become getting so close to the people myself that they had so much confidence in me that I could film such intimate scenes, but that was one thing. But then that I should then present the finished film to total strangers, that was wrong. And the only solution that I can myself reach concerning this issue is that maybe there should always, like they write on some films, this is not suitable for children, or there is violence in this film, or something, that one could say there is so much intimacy in this film that only those people who are prepared to to watch intimate scenes should view it. But of course, then one needs to have a moral code. You can't just show everything indiscriminately. I mean, you have then all this pornography, and which I don't approve of, and violent stuff, which I also don't approve of, and so the judgment, one has to take a moral stand on what one has filmed, whether it's justifiable to present it to the world or to an unknown public or not. It's true. One can't just be indiscriminately exposing. But in the particular case of Duka's dilemma, I don't think we did anybody any harm. And if we did, I haven't heard of any harmful repercussions. I mean, because one has to also look at the film as a whole. We didn't just have Boro giving birth to her child and then leave it at that. We also have scenes of her after the child was born, how she was blessed and her child was blessed, and then how she also talked with her girlfriends about giving birth to the child, and now you get to know her as a human being, as a person, as a newborn mother, and so on. And so it was contextualized, and it wasn't just pornography.
Ina jada ti siye ni paye ma burqa di na min ne inte ne da
mali trin kai yeah ko awre
kala me da
hanja ba ka asuni danje ya sadar macho
verda da ka kurkai
alan gardi le trani ataw kalini anha okay ko to elimi to ko da ka
Resmi paye
ke juga mata ashanya salubu kiti we yankar mata ko
ana dengai
pizza ne pia ko madi pia
giddi ya
pizza ne da pia mai kodi ne ko kodi te pine da habi kodi ne ka tsidi ne karaye us inta pide peda ma yara ma piska ko kare ga ko potulo lai show ngazele kame ida ardika doqa ke malle watara kera sera agala bishe bas zab heka kada fash
kida elmi dia
amuti da irin ko dai su kan ini ne kada gelo ni ata ka kada enu
kada enze ko lela nale ميك قلتنا قلت تاخذ
خلاني رداتي في مراتك ذوقك مالك خيرك أولاد برصد كذا.
My advice would be, as an ethnographic filmmaker, is for the ethnographer, the anthropologist, to have already done field work, already be familiar and have good relations with the people where a film could be made, and have an idea what kind of film is makeable. And then that ethnographer can work with other filmmakers, or make the film himself or herself, but without this preparatory knowledge of what is filmable and what film wants to be made. I think it's I feel, as I say, I feel sorry for those who go out without, just with the idea, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to make a film. I think those films are very unlikely to be very successful, and I would do it the other way around.